The conflict between Palestine and Israel remains one of the most complex and intractable issues in modern history. This is not merely a struggle over borders. It is also a fight over religion, identity, memory, and existential belonging. This cycle, spanning decades, has left deep scars on the collective memory of both peoples, trapping the region in a spiral of violence and uncertainty. Historically, the major wars of 1948, 1967, and 1973 fundamentally altered the map and demographic structure of the region. Today, issues such as the humanitarian crisis in the Gaza Strip, settlements in the West Bank, and the status of Jerusalem stand as the biggest obstacles to any peace initiative. Conflicts, particularly in densely populated civilian areas, frequently call into question international law and human rights. While the two-state solution is seen by the vast majority of the international community as the most reasonable way out on the political level, realities on the ground are making this goal increasingly difficult to achieve. In this environment where mutual trust has completely disappeared, diplomatic channels are blocked, and military force is being imposed as a method of resolution, the heaviest price is once again paid by defenseless civilians, women, and children. Consequently, this wound in the heart of the Middle East has ceased to be merely a regional problem and has become a test of global conscience. Building a climate of peace where weapons are silenced is only possible through a lasting reconciliation where justice is upheld, human dignity is protected, and the right of both peoples to live in security is recognized. This heavy burden of history necessitates leaving a legacy to future generations not of more hatred, but of the will to live together. When we examine the origins of this deep crisis and its present-day repercussions, it is possible to see that the conflict is not limited to military operations but has transformed into a socio-political impasse. This tension, which has lasted for decades, has become a systemic whole that directly affects the lives of every individual in the region. One of the most critical points of the conflict is land ownership and the right of return. For the millions of Palestinians displaced in 1948 and their descendants, refugee status has become an element of identity intertwined with the hope of one day returning to their former homes. On the other hand, the Israeli side prioritizes security and existential concerns, arguing that such a return would fundamentally disrupt its demographic structure. These two diametrically opposed approaches are the most deadlocked point in diplomatic negotiations. The situation is even more dramatic in economic and social terms. In particular, restrictions imposed in one of the world's most densely populated areas, such as the Gaza Strip, have transformed basic human needs like unemployment, energy shortages, and access to clean water into a struggle for survival. In this region enclosed by walls and checkpoints, the restriction of the right to free movement disrupts not only economic life but also family ties and the right to education. The fact that younger generations have known nothing but conflict throughout their lives increases the risk of radicalization and makes building a peaceful future more difficult. The role of international actors is also an integral part of this equation. The strategic interests and regional alliances of major powers often serve to maintain the status quo or manage temporary tensions rather than fostering solution-oriented mediation. The failure of United Nations resolutions to translate into action on the ground undermines confidence in international law, while the asymmetrical balance of power between the parties makes it difficult for the weaker party's voice to resonate on the global stage. In conclusion, the Palestinian-Israeli conflict is not merely an internal matter between the two sides. It is a historical test that challenges the limits of justice, the universality of human rights, and the capabilities of global diplomacy. Lasting peace is only possible through a confrontation aimed at healing the wounds of the past, respect for the right of both peoples to live with dignity, and a vision that prioritizes the sanctity of the human being over the sanctity of the land. Otherwise, every drop of blood spilled will sow the seeds of the next conflict, and these ancient lands will remain a landscape of sorrow rather than a basin of peace. In examining the chronic nature of this conflict, It is crucial to emphasize that the issue unfolds not only along political lines, but also on the plane of profound psychological warfare and cultural rupture. Each passing decade deepens the chasm between the parties, replacing the language of compromise with increasingly harsh polarization in both societies. This situation transforms peace from a document to be signed at a negotiating table into a colossal societal task requiring a revolutionary shift in the minds of both peoples. Settlement policies in the region are causing the issue to evolve from a technical matter of land sharing into an irreversible de facto situation. Expanding settlements in the West Bank are physically fragmenting the territorial integrity of a future Palestinian state, pushing the ideal of a two-state solution towards geopolitical impossibility. This fragmentation of land is not only an administrative challenge but also a process of human isolation that disrupts the daily lives of the people living there, their access to agricultural land, and the connection between their villages. The religious dimension of the issue is the most sensitive element, adding fuel to the fire. The Al-Aqsa Mosque and the surrounding holy sites in Jerusalem hold symbolic value, not only for the local population but also for billions of people worldwide. The slightest tension in these places transcends diplomatic crises, paving the way for global outrage and interfaith polarization. This attribution of sanctity creates an emotional barrier that makes political compromises impossible. It pushes the parties towards a claim of absolute ownership rather than rational sharing. Ultimately, the conflict between Palestine and Israel represents humanity's most challenging test of its ability to coexist. The solution lies not in military superiority, the height of walls, or technological defense systems, but in the establishment of justice and a willingness to mutual recognition. Every scenario in which violence is justified as a method only generates more destruction and hatred. For true peace, a courageous and revolutionary diplomatic initiative is needed, one that focuses on building the future rather than seeking revenge for the past, one that will alleviate the fears of both sides and protect their dignity. This ancient land, worthy of the sanctity it has held for centuries, can only find peace when it escapes the shadow of weapons and finds refuge in the light of justice. And once again, the losing side in wars is the civilian population and children.